and welcome to Novel Not New, a True End podcast. We're a narrative gaming book club podcast where we pick one game each month and play it through and discuss it like a book club. I'm your host, Jennifer Uncle. Joining me as always, Six Detmar.
I am also here.
And returning once again, we have M from Abnormal Mapping.
Hi.
How's it going, M?
I'm, you know what? It's Sunday. I'm sleepy, but I'm doing good.
Oh, is that a Sunday thing for you?
It is when I got up too early and already recorded a podcast. Yeah, I normally do one on Sunday, so two is wiping me out.
I just mean I'm always tired. I'm always sleepy.
Oh, yeah. Fair enough.
But, you know.
Yeah. What have you been up to, M? Any sort of, any good story games or just straight up books or movies you've been getting into?
My problem is everything I do is for another podcast, so I'm stealing from other shows to talk about them here. Like I'm playing Monkey Island 2, that's for Abnormal Mapping. I was playing Muv-Luv, which is technically not for anything, but it might be. Who can say? Muv-Luv is really good. People should check out Muv-Luv. It's on Steam. You don't download the H patch. I know it's like original H game. Don't do that to yourself. Just play Muv-Luv. This is my advice. Never put the H content back in your fucking video game. It's always a mistake.
If it's worth taking the H content out and still having a good game, it's because that's not what the game's really about.
But Muv-Luv was pretty good. If you want a good like slice of life mech thing, it's that.
I don't like the boy very much.
I think as far as like protagonists of visual novels go, he has got a lot of personality, and I find it mostly inoffensive. He's not like, because there's like the two types. There's the guy with no personality, and I don't care about that guy one way or another. And there's a guy with a lot of personality, but it sucks, like VLR. Fucking hate that guy. Like, yeah. Miserable. What a rat bastard. And sometimes you get the guy, you get like AI, the Somnium Files, which is like, that guy's ridiculous, but I mostly find him very charming. I didn't play 2 because I listened to your episode on it. I was like, nope, no, I'm not going to do that. Can't make it. And I think this is closer to like, I think he's mostly very charming.
Okay.
Especially when you get to the second game, because it's 3 games. It's 2 games on Steam, but the first game is the first 2 games bundled together. When you get to Unlimited, and because he played a lot of Virtual On in his like normal slice of life anime world, when he's we're fighting the aliens in the End War world where no one's heard of video games, he's like, oh, we're in real mechs. I could probably still like do frame buffers, and no one knows what he's talking about, but it makes him incredibly good at piloting mechs. And I think that's very charming. I love that stuff.
I just probably need to get through the beginning where it's just him being shitty to his friend nonstop.
Oh, those two have such a realistic, like, we grew up together and we just fucking fight all the time because that's the only way you know how to relate to each other relationship to me. I think those two are great. Because he doesn't treat anyone else like that. It is really just the two of them are like that with each other.
Okay.
Yeah, I too have played Muv-Luv, though I need to get back into it to like see the other routes and get to the part where it becomes sci-fi.
Yeah. I think overall I like the slice of life stuff a little more. That's just my taste though. But I'm also in the middle of like alternative, and alternatives seem really long. It's just a really long game compared to the first 2, because it's as long as those 2 put together, which might be a little much for me.
Does it do that thing where you, at the very beginning, you pick which character you went with in the previous game, and it just turns into a kinetic thing?
No.
Huh, okay.
No, it is really choice light compared to the first 2 games. But the nature of it as a visual novel is like just spoilers all the way down. So I can't even answer any of your questions.
Yeah, that's fair.
It's cool. It is definitely a thing you shouldn't touch until you've played the other 2 games, though. Yeah,
like the first slice of life one is just charming by itself, even without the sci-fi stuff in the second one.
I will say the slice of, when he goes to the other world and gets isekai into the forever war against the aliens, it does not lose the slice of life nature. So much of that is like, when I got isekai, I brought my Game Boy with me, and they've never seen a video game before, and so briefly, one of your characters is just going to get obsessed with playing Game Boy games because they don't know what video games are. It's cute. It's constantly just like that stuff, and I like that.
All right, another poke for me to get back into it.
Yeah. How about you, Six? What have you been up to?
So I guess I got two things. One is something that you'll have a little bit to say about, I think, Jen, because I have played some Sunshine Shuffle.
Yeah, I've played a little bit of that too.
What is this?
So this is a narrative game. This is okay. Make sure I get that. Yeah, it's by Xavier Nelson Jr. This is a Texas Hold'em game where you are playing cards with a group of talking animals.
This is the game Nintendo almost obliterated off the face of the planet.
Yes.
This is that game. So basically, you are a private investigator hired by a gang, hired by a organized crime group, because a number of years ago they got ripped off by just a bunch of working stiffs who decided to become like a heist crew, and robbed a bunch of their businesses. They got their money back, but this is a matter of pride. You have to track them down, and you're like, okay, here's the deal. You can tell me the full story of what happened, and the gang is willing to let it go with that, or you cannot do that, and they're probably going to kill you. And they're like, well, not great choices here, but sure, sit down, we're playing some cards, let's talk about and tell you the story of this series of heists.
Yeah. Another fun thing about that is that no one knows, like, who you are except for the captain when you're initially brought on board, and as everyone's slowly finding out, they're kind of like, hey, why didn't we just kill this guy? Why is he on our boat?
Yeah. So it is just, it's very inspired by Poker Night at the Inventory, right? You're playing poker and conversations are playing out as you play. And yeah, I mean, so far it's all right. They shipped a very important patch the other day, which is lowering the amount of time the NPCs think before playing their cards, because oh my god, when this game launched, you're looking at like 15 to 30 seconds for every action for like raise or check. And it was kind of unbearable. So I have not played as much of this as I might like because I just went crazy from how long it was taking to play a single hand of cards. But the writing's charming enough. There's a kid at the table who's there because the captain lost $12,000 to him in poker, and so there's just this 12-year-old kid playing as everyone's talking about murdering people and swearing a bunch, and that's kind of funny. But it's all right.
Yeah, I think it's that kid specifically that almost got them removed from the eShop entirely, because the developer also has made like the airport run and made like the airport run by and for dogs, and is also making El Paso Elsewhere. And his whole thing is like coming up with incredibly gimmicking marketing tools. Like, I think he talked about potentially bringing bottles of pills for El Paso Elsewhere because that's Max Payne themed. And yeah, this time he just shitposted a little too close to the sun, made a bunch of jokes about whether this game does or does not teach children gambling, and Nintendo got a whiff of that and is like, no, thank you.
Yeah. Perhaps a slightly misguided ad campaign this time.
Yeah.
What are people playing it on?
I'm playing it on PC. Because it's available on PC as opposed to it is of course now available on the Switch.
Oh, I was mostly wondering how it ran on Steam Deck, if anyone was trying that.
I actually don't know. Yeah, I didn't try that. Because it's very mouse based, and I feel like that. I mean, I guess it must not be because you can play it on Switch. I didn't even think about that. Huh. No, my Steam Deck is not quite out of commission, but I have to do surgery on it.
What'd you do? What'd you do?
No, this is apparently there is variance in the manufacturing, and some people get an issue where after a little bit of use, the right analog stick, the wire that plugs into it kind of gets wrapped around the stick and makes it hard to use.
Oh, no. Okay.
So I have to crack it open and move that wire.
The plus is, as someone who's opened up my Steam Deck, very easy.
Oh, that's great. Honestly, you hear that from people on the internet, but that doesn't mean anything from randos, right? Hearing it from someone I actually trust, that's very reassuring. So thank you.
Yeah, I mean, it's not as easy as like a GBA, which is like you crack that open, you're fine, but it's not. I would not be terrified to do this.
Okay, great.
Yeah, the fact that they've worked with a teardown company to design it and also just get the documentation out there makes it so much more relieving.
Yeah.
The other thing that I have been enjoying lately is actually some Kingdom news.
Oh, God.
So I have started watching the Romance of the Three Kingdoms 1994 live-action series, recently subtitled in English by the group Gentlemen of the Han.
All right.
This is the 84 episode, and each episode is 45 minutes.
Yeah,
like
I know the one.
Epic,
the big
adaptation.
one.
Yeah. I'm 3 episodes in, which is like, oh, that's not very far, but it's like, well, they're 45 minutes each, so I'm almost 3 hours in. But this is great. I'm having a very good time. I like their casting a lot, and they make some choices where, like, so like every fucking adaptation of this book, they're making Xuande a good guy, right?
Yeah.
He's our hero. But they're kind of adding stuff to make it like I'm having fun with it because he's such a whiny baby. In the part where they're gonna do the Oath of the Peach Garden, he tells this story while crying about this like theoretical noble who's descended from the throne, who just is living in poverty, and his life is so hard, and he's always tries to do the right thing, but everyone just won't let him get started, right? And everyone else starts crying too, and they're like, man, this is such a sad story, who are you talking about? And he's like, would you believe it if it's me? It's so melodramatic about it that it makes it easier to go along, because I can forget this is just a shitty guy and just have fun with it, you know? That's essential. It's also kind of fun because I think it does a good job of the perspective shifts, right? Because like episode 1 is the three brothers meeting in the Peach Garden is most of the episode. Episode 2 doesn't feature them at all. It just cuts to the eunuchs and the whole, like, the gradual rise of Dong Zhuo and all that. Well, I guess not gradual. It takes a while and then it just kind of happens. But I think early on they're doing a great job of not just trying to make this one, like, narrative where there's, a main character who's always on screen, which is one of the flaws I find with these adaptations, is trying to make, Liu Bei always in a scene. So... yeah, I don't know. So far, it's really good. They really did spend a fucking lot of money on this. They just have, like, B-roll of, like, battles where it's, like, a helicopter looking down on just hundreds and hundreds of people play fighting with swords and shooting flaming arrows at each other. And you're like, this must have cost so much money.
Damn.
So.
Yeah, I might need to check that out for myself. That sounds pretty good.
Yeah, I'm having a great time. Every once in a while, I just need a fresh injection of Three Kingdoms in my life. So.
Yeah. Meanwhile, I ended up choosing 2 games that are about having a very bad time. The first one I've been playing is The Pale Beyond. Have either of you ever watched The Terror?
No.
No.
Okay, it's basically an FX series where a period piece British naval ship ends up getting stuck in Arctic ice, and when those kind of ships get stuck in Arctic ice, they get stuck, and they're just spending weeks and weeks rationing, doing their best to survive and keep themselves together while, like, a monster's kind of prowling around. The Pale Beyond is like that, except there's no monster, and you're basically the one in charge. Like, you kind of get hired onto this, you get hired onto the crew of the ship called the Temperist, the Temperates, to, seek out a ship named the Viscount, a sister ship that happened to get lost while trying to find the true magnetic pole. And, the people paying for this don't really tell you much about the mission other than that, yeah, it's a simple rescue mission. And at a certain point while you're doing first officer duties, you get stuck in the ice. The captain is basically in his bathtub completely drunk, and it was like, yeah, I knew this was going to happen. It's all a shit show. And everyone goes to bed. The next morning, the captain has left and taken several members of the crew, several bits of your resources, and by a very slim margin, because there are many people still loyal to this captain, you are suddenly the captain yourself. And the game is about surviving for 35 weeks while waiting for a rescue ship that's supposedly coming to come and save your ass. And it's this really interesting balance where you do want to keep the people who were initially on your side during the vote happy, while also going to the people who were loyal to the original captain and doing your best to do right by them, while also not putting everyone else in further danger.
So how is it mechanically then? Like, I don't know, are you, is it fun?
I think so, yeah. Like, you're basically learning about each character, and each one has it's a very eclectic cast of characters. Like, there's one reporter that ended up coming along just to document everything that's happening. There's someone who used to be a movie star / former sailor who has an upbeat attitude, but a lot of people side-eye him just because, like, he's not a true sailor or whatever. And essentially each week involves bringing them into your quarters, listening to what they need, balancing out what would make them happy with what would keep them alive. And it is a game that is incredibly stressful, and it's altogether likely that you will lose a number of people, if not everyone. But it is one of those things where there's something very compelling about a situation where a naval ship who's, like, it isn't the best put together to begin with, gets stuck in a remote area, and you kind of just see how people end up coping or do not cope at all, and start running into problems.
Sounds like your kind of game and not mine.
Yeah. The other one that's definitely not your kind of game is Stasis Bone Totem, which is a... It's a terrible subtitle, but, like, I really like the original Stasis when it came out. It's like a isometric horror adventure game. If you've ever heard of something like Sanitarium back in the 90s, it's very similarly built to that, with like a bunch of highly detailed CG cutscenes and just running around solving puzzles, switching between characters. The first one was in space, while this one you're kind of visiting a derelict oil rig, which turns out to be something more like a... It turns out to be something more like a research lab. And the thing about this specific dystopian sci-fi setting, it is hard dystopia. Like, you have situations where a church/business essentially runs everything on Earth. You have a bunch of people who are only here because they're in debt, and their families are being held in debtors' prisons while they figure things out. You have diving suits, where the oxygen method is basically putting in a artificially grown lung into the back. Computers are run through gigantic oversized brains. It's all stuff that is very grim, but also kind of funny just because of how ludicrous it all is. But it does a lot better than you'd expect at balancing the level of humor and just body horror present in that stuff. Like you're basically a wife-husband duo, and you're also joined by a third person/creature. It's basically, imagine Winnie the Pooh, except if it was like a little robot, and it's just in a very bad situation. Like, it's been kept around even though, like, it was present and somewhat contributed to, like, these two characters had a daughter, and the daughter did not survive, even though the bear tried to save them. So every time the husband sees the bear, he just has to deal with these emotions like, I really hate your fucking guts because I associate you with our child dying, but also, like, you have the mind of a Winnie the Pooh character, so I can't really hold it against you, even though part of me wants to. And you just get bits where suddenly you have to open a door and he's the only one nearby, and his way of opening the door is enabling a... Let me post a screenshot, because it does a good job of kind of showing the mix of dark/unintentional/intentional humor. Let me see. You just got this funny little bear who also happens to be a hacker, taking care of things along the way, and he reacts to everything by, like, reading out PSAs. Like, when he sees a body, he'll just introduce himself to it, thinking it's alive. When he sees things like a knife or an electrical outlet, he's like, children should not be near knives, or this is not a very friendly place to play. And it's all done in what I describe as robot voice, like the robotic character in Prometheus played by Michael Fassbender, that kind of thing. And it all adds up to this interesting, stomach-churning / very entertaining horror adventure.
Oh, that's Gen Core.
Yeah.
But on to, something we've all played.
Yeah. Something a little lighter, too. We're covering Private Eye Dol. Which is a 1995 TurboGrafx CD / PC Engine CD game, developed and published by NEC.
Well, developed by Hunex, who's still making games. They're currently making Switch Otome games. Apparently did development work on MiHoYo, so... Or not MiHoYo, what's that called? The Witch and the Holy Night.
Oh, MiHoYo, yeah.
MiHoYo, yes.
I was like,
Not
They
MiHoYo.
worked on Genshin?
No. I just confuse the two in my brain constantly. This is my mistake.
Fair.
And then a bunch of stuff that never comes out over here. Because Switch has got so many visual novels that no one in English will ever see. It's really sad.
Yeah, and like looking into the history of the TurboGrafx while I'm doing this, like...
Oh, you want to talk about a console that has no English awareness.
Yeah, like you just have these consoles like TurboGrafx, the Sega Saturn, all that sort of stuff where you have hundreds and hundreds of games that like are kind of shit, except they never got official English patches. So official English translations.
Mm-hmm. Well, even like the fan translation scene is just now getting to being able to reliably do CD-based games. So I think you're going to see them. I just don't think it's going to be like that many because it does take a considerable amount of effort.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Like, it does seem like there are a number of really high-profile translations that have been released recently, but that seems to be just from sheer momentum of a lot of projects coming together all at once.
A lot of them are also on PlayStation where there's just more awareness, right? Think of like the upcoming My Summer Vacation translations finally hitting. There's been the that racing RPG that Square put out, famously came out last year, stuff like that. I mean, that's how we ended up doing this one, is I saw that this translation had dropped kind of randomly. Never heard of this game before. And I was like, damn, this is one of those that I should say I will play and never will. And then Six got in my DMs being like, hey, would you like to just come on and do this? And I was like, okay, sure. Why not?
Yeah. And I'm glad you did, because this has been a very fun, breezy game to play through.
Mm-hmm.
It's a nice compliment after we spent...
after you spent 80 hours playing cards in hell last time? Yes.
Yeah, that was a fun episode. I just needed something a little lighter after that.
Yeah, maybe more fun to record than to prepare for.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and summarize what's going on here. After filming a commercial for Orica, a futuristic AI featuring a hologram beamed from a ring, actress May Starr receives an Orica of her own and names it Navi. En route to the filming location for a horror project, May and the rest of the secondary film crew find themselves isolated in a supposedly haunted house. When things take a turn for the tragic, May and Navi work together to sniff out clues and expose the culprit. This sets off a series of events that leads to unlikely friendships, startling revelations about May's father, and a showdown against a shadowy syndicate that turns May into quite the unique public star.
Public Star, a good one. His last name Star. That's
yeah. Pun not, and then also intended after I read it. It's like, oh, okay.
Yeah, so this is feels like one of the you noted this yourself, but it feels like one of the predecessors to sort of the RPG Maker story games craze that happened thereafter.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so the game is like presented in like a dual hybrid thing where it's visual novel scenes, but then the gameplay itself is you moving through an RPG space, like a top-down 2-dimensional RPG. Until sometimes it's like randomly a Japanese adventure game. And especially in the fourth part, there's a lot of like faux snatcher moving through. That's the one I think of as like the big one everyone knows. Where you're moving through scenes and there's like, go to downtown, then go to parking garage, look at parking garage, open parking garage door, sort of like verb usage. It all kind of melds together in this very strange experimental way. What's interesting to me is that it seems like Unix's catalog is mostly straight visual novels. Like 95 is really late, even for the PC Engine CD-ROM, which was like officially discontinued, I think, in 94 in Japan. And went immediately on to make like Saturn games, which makes complete sense to me. Like I said, I think they did a little bit of Sega CD stuff, but then mostly Saturn, then moved on to like Vita and PSP and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Which feels like where this comes from.
Mm-hmm. There's a funny way of like tracking. There's a funny way of figuring out exactly where in the history of like TurboGrafx this was coming out. Like in that final case, there's a billboard for the PCFX that it cycles through. Want to know how many games? Well, I'll start by saying TurboGrafx 16, 686 games. You want to take a guess for
you mean
how many?
Specifically the PC Engine. The TurboGrafx did not have 600 video games. I promise you, it's not a huge success in the West.
Yeah, PC Engine 686 games.
Yeah.
Do you want to guess how many the PCFX had?
Oh, very few, I assume.
62.
You looked that up.
No, I guessed.
Oh, because it is 62 on the dot.
Oh, wow.
Shit. I'm good at this.
The thing about the PC Engine, this really is not germane to the discussion here, but briefly, Hudson put out the PC Engine in Japan in 1987. It is a console that competes directly with the Famicom in the height of its power and manages to be like more capable than it by quite a bit. To the point where they were able, especially with the CD add-on, to extend its lifespan well past into the like end of the Genesis Super Nintendo era of video games. Just a cool ass console, but mostly known for like visual novels and shmups and like action games. So, you know, if you like vertical shooters, the PC Engine's got your back for like 150 games.
Yeah. While we were setting up the emulator for this, I happened to download a number of other TurboGrafx games, and I messed around with Cotton and R-Type and stuff like that, and it's like, damn, this is a really cool system.
Oh yeah, their version of R-Type was the home version of R-Type for a long time.
I also want to do my public mea culpa that I have for a long time conflated the PC Engine and the PC-98, and they're just completely different machines.
Yeah. I understand like aesthetically if you look at some of the games, like especially like something like this looks like the like mid 80s anime PC games, right? Coming out of like the Dojin scene, or just actually published. And the PC-98 is like the poster child for that aesthetic of anime PC games that no one in America will ever be able to play, unfortunately. They always look very cool. I like everyone, you know, you follow PC-98 bot and you're like, man, every one of these screenshots looks like the most wild shit in the world. And I know that even if you've got translations, I would not play them because they're creaky PC games. Thankfully, when this showed up, it's like, oh, this would be approachable. There was a bit where I went to How Long to Beat, and there was like only a couple ratings of this game, and it was like 18 hours. I was like, this game's going to be 18 hours long, and we don't have any guides or anything, so if we get stuck, we're screwed. Turns out, no, this game's like 6 hours long.
Yeah, the person who said 18 hours is a person who had no guides.
I was like, are you translating
not
this?
Not a lot of intuitive sense.
14 of those 18 hours were spent doing that fucking box puzzle.
The one I was like, there's got to be a YouTube video of someone doing this box puzzle, and there was.
The box puzzle has 3 steps, and the last one it was like, oh, this isn't hard. The first 2 I had to check.
Yes.
The last one was all right.
I was the complete opposite. Like the first 2, like I could breeze through it, and the third one I had to look at the video for that M provided.
Yeah. If you want to look at this video game without playing it, there is a full long play on YouTube that is in the world's worst like stretched aspect ratio and has like the most aggressive pixel filtering on I've ever seen. It looks awful.
It's so ugly. It is like it has a Photoshop like not actual Photoshop, like a knockoff like third party like watercolor filter over it. It looks disgusting.
It's so awful. Which is a shame because the reason you play a game like this is that it looks fucking incredible. Yeah, very pretty game. You got really of its era like character designs, with like big lavish cutscenes, and it is fully voice acted because that's the power of the CD-ROM.
Yeah, like when it's going into cutscene mode, everything is framed and acted out like an actual episode of anime. It's really impressive.
Mm-hmm.
I'm slightly less impressed by like some of the mechanics in the game, especially the first case where it's
mostly run around until you hit the next trigger that you never could have predicted what it was. It's just like something changed. One thing changed in this house. Find it.
Yeah, the thing that drove me up the wall, like specifically with that first case, is I was continuously trying to figure out how to get the lights on and went back to the boiler again and again, and it turns out the really small round thing near the boiler was the thing I was supposed to click on instead.
Classic mistake.
Yeah. My big sabotage in that section was when I was like, oh, this guy is like, oh, this blonde-haired asshole is moving. He's probably going to go to the next story thing. So I followed him, and I talked to him there, and he was like, piss off. And I was like, oh, okay, I guess I had the wrong thing. And I looked around for another, 15 minutes, and it turns out the problem is that I followed him in. If I'd let him complete walking before I walked in the room, then a scene would have played. And I'm like, I hate it here.
I had one of those with where he slaps what's her face. It had been a couple weeks since I played this.
Yeah, that's the exact yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, Motoko, right?
Yeah.
Like, he's specifically going after Motoko and Kana during that specific chapter, and is either terrorizing one of them or both of them, and eventually comes around to get you two.
Mm-hmm.
And you never really get what his deal is. I mean, I guess he's just an asshole.
He's just an asshole, yeah. Just a shitty guy. It's weird because, so much of that first story feels like a setup for, a thing. It's just we're introducing the main character and kind of the vibe. This is a mystery game. But, none of it really matters in the way the rest of the game plays out. Because the rest of the game is all really coherent into a single narrative of this syndicate and the mystery of your father and all the detective shit he was doing, and it builds on itself. And this is just this one bottle episode Scooby-Doo gang mystery.
It reminded me of the way Phoenix Wright games usually go. The first case is something where they're kind of teaching you the ropes and getting you familiar with what the loop will be. And then
the problem is the mechanics are entirely different in the three main cases of this video game, or four, I guess, even. Because the stuff that you do on the island has nothing to do with the stuff you do on the boat, mechanically.
Yeah, and once you're in the city, they introduce a mechanic that matters for 15 minutes until they abandon it again.
Yes. Which is not necessarily a complaint, it just feels like they're experimenting with types of adventure gaming, and just not caring to be consistent between segments, which is fine. But it does give the whole thing kind of an OVA quality of you boot up the next thing and you have no idea what's coming next. The minute you start putting landmarks on the island to try to go to new locations, I was like, okay, we could do anything.
Tengu Rock is evil. It's haunted. The only clue you can get is oh, you can see it from the bay. And I'm like, point at the bay on this map. There are three things you could consider the bay, and also you can see 90% of the island from them.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, but there's a lot of stuff with the map that's just I was trying to put things the square next to where it's supposed to go, or there's the bit where you get on top of the trees and look at the temple, and it took me fucking forever just to figure out where that was. I think I had to put the temple 3 places to find where the temple was.
Did you get the clue from the couple?
No.
If you talk to the couple, they're like, oh yeah, we tried to go to Tengu Rock and we got completely lost and ended up at this temple or something.
Yeah, no.
And they're it's next, they're basically it's on the same tile as a river, which narrows it down so much.
Narrow down quite a bit, yes.
Oh, wow.
I just used the view from the top to be okay, well, it's definitely west, but west is a lot of tiles of grass, so I have no idea. In fact, when I found it when I put it on the river, I'm like, this does not look like where the thing I was looking at from the treetops is.
Well, May just has a bad sense of direction. What can you do?
Yep. I think it's funny, given that the iconography of the video game is so much about her and her little robot ring doll, that character has nothing to do with the plot ever, not once. It does not matter.
Well, technically, she has a very minor role when you discover that they've stolen her source code.
Yes.
Oh, I thought that was going to go in a completely different direction,
AKA anywhere.
Yeah, the company was going to be evil or part of the syndicate or something, and that didn't turn out to be the case at all.
No, it's just there to have Orica make a joke about feeling naked seeing it. It's okay.
Yeah.
Sure.
There's also a part where you find a Palm Pilot link cable or something to plug her into a computer so that she can decode a letter.
Yeah, but like none of those things are like vital. Like she's not important to the story in the way you think a AI that lives on your hand would be.
Mm-hmm. Which also the like using her with the computer thing is so funny because you get this disc and you pop it in and it just turns into a black screen with white text giving you this like poem riddle, and someone's like, you don't have to do the riddle. Just plug in a cable.
Oh, that final case, like, it's the degree to which you don't matter in that story until like the very end was a little frustrating because like in the second situation with both the boat and the island, they introduce you to Tachibana, who happens to be a former partner of your dad's and was also the father of the woman who gets murdered in the first case. It basically, the way that you play out that final case is you going to a bunch of places where the breadcrumbs leave, and every time it's like, oh yeah, Tachibana was already here, and he's pointing you to the next area.
Yes.
Yeah. I guess I didn't mind that because that felt as, I mean, like, I feel like it's summed up in the scene where you're like sneaking onto the crime scene wearing like a Halloween City police officer outfit, and Tachibana turns and is like, what are you doing? It's like, no, he like does this all the time. It's gonna take you a little bit of legwork to catch up with him, and I think that's fine.
I mean, part of it is that the game is just extremely lighthearted about all these murders happening. It is not particularly grim about it, right? You are just doing all these would-be actresses, these cute anime girls going through these murder scenarios, and it's kind of chill. Like in the middle of you trying to solve the final case, you just like run across everyone like shopping or hanging out at the cafe, and they're like, oh, tell us about what you're doing. Oh, you're solving some murders. You want to tell us about that? And we'll just give you like one piece of advice. Okay, we're gonna go back to shopping now.
It's so funny because the game is so fucking gory whenever like they show an actual scene. Like there's when they do that flashback about the haunted house and it shows like the dad standing over the wife and child that he slew, it's like, Jesus Christ.
Yeah, just not a lot of sense of restraint on that stuff, but it also doesn't feel, it feels like, you know, they're not trying to make it like super graphic. They're just sort of like, oh, this is what it would look like, I think. That's like, I guess.
This is part of the OVA thing, right? It's like, if we were making this a TV anime, we never could have shown this like violently mutilated body, but this is a video game, so we can do what we want. No one's telling us no.
Thing that changes a little bit with some time.
Yes.
In video games.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think I got off on the wrong foot with this game, and I suspect maybe y'all did too, because the first case is a bit of a grind with how it's just designed, like the actual mystery hunting part of it.
Well, thankfully the download comes with a README, and the README has like general hints and tricks. And for Act 1, it was like if you don't know where to go, just keep going into every room, and you'll eventually figure it out. Which is truly the advice to get through Act 1.
Yeah, I ended up doing that just because I've played, some RPG Maker games, but I did not notice that README at all.
Which I kind of just put in as like my mindset I was going into. Like, I'm just gonna click around, and I did case 1 in like 2 nights, and then I think I did most of the game in like 1 sitting. Because I was bracing myself for, that's gonna be like 18 hours of going through like this, but like in different locations. And thankfully, that was not the case.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But I liked the second and third cases a lot more.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, me too.
The thing that kind of won me over in the first case was after getting through that roadblock with the power generator, there's the bit where you can go into the game room where Motoko and Kana are just throwing darts, and you can totally just walk in front of the dartboard and have them scream at you like, what the fuck you doing?
Yeah, it's very good. Yeah, and that stuff is just the dysfunctional, like, the thing people were doing, the fake psychic coming here to do the fake psychic stuff, the like TV crews like, chant harder so we can make this video, it'll sell really well. It was just like really charming to me in like a bad found footage horror movie way that I just vibed with that stuff. But yes, it's when you get to the boat, and especially the island, where it just turns into like a much more like driven adventure game. I'm like, this is much more my speed.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Did y'all ever figure out that specific the purpose of that mechanic where you can decide who did it on the boat and like have that advance things? Because 9 times out of 10 when I was doing that, that just meant the person who was accused would not talk to me, so I had to switch it to someone else.
Yeah, I think it's just for making the final accusation.
Yeah. But I definitely did experiment with it a couple times, just to like see if it would change stuff, but it didn't really change that much other than like, yeah, the person you're accusing, if you talk to them, will just instantly get mad at you, which is very funny to go around being like, I think Tachibana did it. That guy looks sus as hell.
And it's also, you know, like, I mean, you wouldn't expect it to, but it doesn't really have any consequences. You're like, I definitely, it was the janitor. And he's like, what the fuck, man? And then you change your answer and it's like, it never happened.
Yeah.
It's like, you know, of course.
I really did think it was the janitor for quite a while, though. I'll be honest.
Me too. It did make sense.
Yeah, because he was like cleaning in the area like 2 rooms away and also was just going through the various rooms. So it's like, probably him, but
you just construct these elaborate scenarios. Like, well, the janitor, when he was cleaning the room, crawled up into the crawl space and then shimmied his way over into the other room and stole the thing and shimmied back over. When the answer is a snake did
it. Well, a snake did it, but also they got into the crawl space. Kihara is such a fun character. She's hanging out with her snakes that she's doing research on. Like, the first time you see her, she's literally covered in gore because she's feeding all this meat to her snakies. And you literally find the ring that she stole in the mouth of one of the snakes, held together by a toothpick.
I was surprised that she didn't really come back, and like, you see her on the island, she's like holed up in her hotel room being attacked by her snake the entire time, basically. And I would have liked more with that character because I thought she was really fun. I feel the same way about most of your crew at the haunted house shoot. I'm like, some of these guys are really neat, and they do come back in the 4th case, but like just as cameos, basically.
Yeah. The one that kind of makes the first case important is Motoko, because initially Mei and Motoko hate each other's guts. But
Motoko is like one of those characters I am just born to love. I love just like an evil brat like this.
Who just has like, Mei herself comments on the 180 personality turn just because Motoko decides she likes you. Yes. So she becomes a different person. Yes. It's great.
Yeah, very much you're being brought into her friend group after the 2 of you experienced a tragedy together. And there's something sweet about the way she kind of just picks Mei up after Mei's like, I feel really weird, like, playing this detective role, even though, like, I'm not equipped for this at all.
Yes. And then they go on vacation together, a normal thing for people to do.
It's so great. It's one of those little details in this game that just I feel like has so much personality. Because I was talking, you talk to Motoko and sort of like interview her a little bit through the door, and then you show up with Tachibana, right, on Into, and he's like, use the window. We'll see her face. The conversation will be better. Yes. And you don't get any new clues that way. You just get to also see her sprite.
Yes.
I love the bit during the cruise ship where Mei just comments, "Oh damn, we only have 1 bed," and Motoko's just like, "Oh, we're girls together, so it's fine." Oh ho ho ho.
Motoko's great. Yeah, I think I'm with M. Like, this game is pretty short, and I almost want to say it's too short just because I feel like I want more. More hanging out with the other characters you meet, and that would naturally make the game longer.
Yes.
Because, like, I mean, when it comes time for this game to close, I mean, this happens a lot, I think, in Japanese, like, mystery, like, stuff that isn't pure mystery, or even sometimes when it is, where it's like, hey, there's this overarching plot. Okay, we're gonna finish it all right now. And it's like, oh, okay, we wrapped it up really fast, actually. Really fast. Yeah. And it just feels like there's, I don't know, this game is a little slapdash in ways, and it's just like some of this is just expectation from what this and its peers would inspire and the genre this would become, But
yeah, my thing is like, I would have liked the thing in like Phoenix Wright, where before every case you have like whatever like Nick and May are off doing some stupid shit, going like touring a spiritualist village or something, and just kind of joking around before things pop off. And this doesn't really have that in the same way. But also, every time like an Ace Attorney game takes 25 hours to complete, I'm like, that's too long. So yeah. I guess this is the trade-off, is I get a game where I would rather have a game where I finish it going, oh, I really could use like another case or like some more hangout time, than going, I am exhausted. I never want to think about this series again for at least another year.
Yeah, I really wish there were at least one or two other games in this with these particular characters, because it's just so much fun hanging out with them.
Yeah, it definitely evokes a thing where it's like, in another world where this had been really successful, they just would have made more. Like there's a 3-episode, like 15-minute piece OVA that exists online of this. It's not, there's no subtitles, so I didn't end up checking it out, but it is there if you want to just watch raw Japanese anime. And it's a whole unique story. It's like just another case.
Yeah, it's basically about a hacker that's targeting idols and like releasing videos of them that show them in more vulnerable moments. I only really watched the first 5 minutes because, again, not translated, but I did like how it opens with her basically playing a magical girl in a action show.
That's great. She does not do a whole lot of acting for being an aspiring actress in this thing. There's like the one commercial.
But it's how she beats the final boss.
It is how she beats the final boss. She's such a good actress. She's able to take down the chief of police. That sequence took me so many tries to get right.
It took me a couple, but
I just could not figure out quite what, because it was like, look for his facial expressions, but the guy's got 3 expressions. It was not helpful.
Yeah, I just tried to say the thing that seemed like the thing to say and didn't pay attention to anything else. The only thing that got me is I feel like there is a point where the right thing to do is to very quickly be like, oh, you want to see your subordinate? He's right here.
Yes.
And it's like, I feel like if I do that, I'll pull him out and he'll say, hey, boss, this is all bullshit.
Yeah, the thing with me is if you mention him but don't pull him out, like in other tactics, it shuts it down immediately where he just clams up. Yeah. So I was like, oh, I have to get through this conversation without ever mentioning my association with that guy. And that's not the right answer.
Nah, you got to double down.
Yeah.
I kept cracking up during that scene because all I was imagining when they mentioned pay attention to his facial expressions is the LA Noire version of this, where you just have an actor just making a face like they just ate a lemon or something.
Oh my god.
Imagine if you could hold a button and it would just switch to like a FMV of him just like rocking in his seat.
We're all playing Street Fighter 6 right now. The when you're in versus mode and you move the stick and they make the goofy faces. If there was just an LA Noire style game, but everyone's like RE Engine like goofy faces, it'd be so good.
Yeah.
For some reason it reminds me. Did you ever do the thing in Metal Gear? You must have. You know your Metal Gear Solid well enough. In Metal Gear Solid 2, where you can make Raiden like respond to things in codec calls.
Yes,
you can make it be like no, just it doesn't matter. No one pays any attention. But
it is really funny.
I did not know you could do that.
Oh yeah, you have positive and negative responses to indicate how Raiden feels about the conversation that's happening, and it doesn't do anything, but you can.
Imagining someone just hitting the no version over and over again as Rose is talking about his empty bedroom and all that.
Imagining.
I
lived it.
I always read that as like you get their internal monologue of like reacting to the things they've been told and not actually vocalizing it.
Yeah, no, I definitely think that's true.
Yeah, I looked it up. You just hit R2 during the codec calls, and yeah, they'll just it's any of the codec calls in the game, like Snake talking to Otacon, he'll also have a bunch of stuff to say.
Oh, Snake will do it too. I didn't know that.
But it's mostly just them going like, I can't believe that. Oh, I can't believe he's still talking. Just like very obvious barks.
Yeah, the part about the showdown that threw me off was actually getting into the garage itself, because like there's a bit where you have to figure out where the autopsy is being held. Mm-hmm. So you go up to the wall where there's a bunch of cars, and like I knew I had the one. I figured out which car it was pretty quickly, but like every time I chose it within that look for clues menu, Navi would be like, but don't you think that's a little too obvious? And,
yes. That part is really badly signposted that's the correct answer. Also, you get at least I got the information that guy snuck into the parking garage a couple years ago, really early on. So I was like, well, clearly at the end of this game, I need to sneak into the parking garage because there could be information there. Right. Because I know how video games and plots work and stories. But the roundabout way in which you discover that guy's just like living at the apartment by like knocking on doors is really haphazard. Unless there's like a thing to point you that guy's in that room, I literally found it by checking everything because I didn't know where else to go.
Yeah, I don't think there is. And it's also like, until that point, it is one of the doors that doesn't do anything.
Yes.
It does, like, they have nameplates near each door where you can read that. So at a certain point, I had already checked all the nameplates, and when the camera people back at the stage was like, oh yeah, that guy went home, I was like, okay, I know where to go.
Yeah, because I had been checking with him multiple times to be like, I need to find the dialogue option to let him help me get into the parking garage. And it just doesn't trigger until like the 11th hour right at the end there.
Yeah.
That's like the most classic adventure game thing there is.
Yes. Yeah.
Those games never account for you thinking 10 steps ahead of them. Same thing with like the information dealer, which it is the funniest sequence of the game, how you get to talk with him, because you basically visit this cafe where each person only gets one order a day, and then the owner's like, all right, scram. But once you find out the sun clue, you go and sit in the sun chair specifically, and you have to wait like 15 to 20 seconds before he comes over and he's like, all right, you're by the sun chair. What can I do for you?
Okay, so I did that purely by accident.
Oh my God.
It's sitting in the correct chair. And then I left because I was like, I sat there and nothing happened, because you have to like take your hands off the controller for a good like 3 or 4 seconds, and then he walks over. And so then I checked the video because I was like, I thought I'd just sit down there and I could say beast to him or whatever, right? And it's really funny in the playthrough, because the playthrough is a person who also didn't have a guide, right? They're just playing this game, and they sit down at the chair and they're like, pancakes, and they get pancakes. Like, and then they're like, no, okay, the load to save, and they're like, lemonade, they get lemonade. They go through the entire menu.
Oh my God.
It's like, buddy. But as soon as I saw that if you sat still, he walks up to you, I'm like, oh, okay, so I just do that. Okay.
They also cut out a puzzle for that playthrough, like the bit where you get the solution for that guy's safe. Like, it's, I saw in the comments, like, where'd you get that code? And he just replied with, oh, I cut that out.
Yeah. Must have been, an accident, I'm sure, just splicing things together. But
yeah, speaking of things where you solve it and you don't know that you can just move on, like doing that puzzle, and like, I just continuously flip the pieces back and forth, like in the solved positions, thinking that it would trigger something, but it doesn't. It's just, you get that code and you bring it to the safe.
Yeah. I just did it. I was like, okay, this is clearly the safe code. I don't quite understand what it's telling me, and then just futzed around with it till it worked.
Yeah, I just took the screenshot and was like, all right, next. So, and then, also was like, wait, there's no letter option on this save.
Exactly.
But yeah, no, this game's just a delight.
Yeah. It's really short. It looks great. I generally just wish I spent more time with this library. And this style of game also. Like, there's so few of them that are in English that the ones that are, you just gotta go out and play. We did Snatcher, I think, last year for neural mapping. And that was great too. Much longer game. And honestly, in some ways, a much worse game. But it is fun to just play this style of video game, because I just have so little experience with it. And the aesthetic is just like peerless. They're always so good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we're definitely going to do Snatcher and Police Knots on here at some point.
Yeah, like what I saw of Snatcher was like, that's a glimpse of what would have happened if like PC Engine CD games really took off in the West, instead of like the other way that they handled things.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think that's what I've got on Private Eye Dol. It's great. I had a great time.
Yeah. I thoroughly recommend anyone just go ahead and check it out. Like, TurboGrafx emulation is TurboGrafx/PC Engine emulation is relatively easy.
Did you end up using Manafin for that?
Yep.
Okay.
I did, yeah.
Yeah,
it was confusing until I got it to work and I realized it wasn't confusing.
Yeah. I played this on my Mister. So if you want to go that route and drop several $100s on a great piece of hardware, I highly recommend it. It's great.
Yeah, I saw that you even had like one of the 8-bit Do PC Engine controllers.
The PC Engine controllers are good. Not really necessary for this game because it doesn't need the turbo for anything, but I do try to play it the closest to a real controller I can get a hold of.
I played with a keyboard.
Yeah, no, it's totally fine to play it that way. You could absolutely play this windowed on your PC, no filters, just like you load it up like an indie game with your keyboard. It would be perfect for that, honestly, genuinely.
Mm-hmm.
One thing about PC or about CD-ROM games, because I just didn't grow up with them really. Fully voiced, but the audio quality in this game is so bad. It's very charming to me how every voice sounds like they're recording from a different type of tin can.
Yeah, that level of audio quality was kind of what I was used to just from playing a lot of PC CD-ROM games and things like that. So
yeah,
like it was genuinely a revelation to me when I eventually got around to playing PlayStation 1 games and realized that a lot of them just have crystal clear audio. It's really
once they switched to like production values and like higher quality samples, and yes, yeah. I will say that the person who did this translation has like there's like a whole trilogy of games that they recently did because I was checking out their website called Ginga Ojo-sama Densetsu Yuna, which starts on the TurboGrafx CD, and I think the third game's on the PlayStation. That look very similar in like aesthetic. I don't think they're made by the same people, but they are like anime adventure games, and it makes sense why this is the type of game this person translates.
Huh. Yeah, I'll definitely need to check that out because, like, now that I have TurboGrafx/PC Engine emulation all sorted, like, I'm just really excited to get in there and play a bunch of stuff. Like, one of the other things I tested with it was Castlevania Rondo of Blood, and that game just has the coolest fucking intro out of any game from that era I've ever seen.
I am an infamous Rondo of Blood hater. You're not wrong. I'm the one person who's like Rondo of Blood's just not as good as some of the other Castlevania games around it. I am a Bloodlines respecter. I'm like, Bloodlines is way cooler than Rondo of Blood, an opinion very few people on Earth have.
Yeah, that's.
Meanwhile, I'm over here like doing like the like bleh, scratching the back of my head, going, I like Portrait of Ruin.
I like Portrait of Ruin's really good. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But you're like 10 years out of date here. Like
I played all those. They're just too hard. I suck at them.
Yeah,
that's fair.
Bloodlines is the one where like they took the like PC 98 remake of Castlevania 1 and brought it to PS1,
No.
Right?
That's Chronicles, which is the Sharp 68,000 remake of Castlevania. Bloodlines, the Genesis game. About World War I nonsense. You go around a map of Europe and every stage is a different European country. And it has like all of the tricks of Super Castlevania 4, but it's done on a Genesis, which can't do any of the tricks of the Super Nintendo. So it's just really charmingly like slapdash sometimes. I think it's a really cool game, is the thing.
Oh yeah. That's the one where like the second stage is set in this watery area and you constantly see your reflection. It's so cool.
Yeah. And then the whole bit floods. There's like a whole period where there's a whole level where you're going up like a big tower that's like rotating in the background, but it's a Genesis, so it just doesn't look quite right. And it's still very impressive, but just in a way that's very funny. I think that game's cool. I really like it. And to be fair, Rondo of Blood, slick as hell, looks great, sounds great. When I played it, I was like, I think this is shallower than some of the other Castlevanias I like of the era, which is not a common opinion. But you should, if you have not played Rondo of Blood, people should play Rondo of Blood. It's really good.
Yeah. Like all those games are pretty hard, especially Bloodlines, because just Sega Genesis has this infamous level of difficulty for most of their stuff. But they're
use save states. That's why I use save states for that sort of stuff. I'm not here to like beat my head against the wall of difficulty for 3 weeks. I want to finish a game in a weekend and go play something else.
Hell yeah.
It's a good way to live. It's clean living. I reinstalled Total War 3 Kingdoms, so I'm also going the other way. On
if
that,
if a game takes me more than like 7 hours to play, I get antsy. I really just am not built like that. I wish I was the person who's like, I'm gonna put another 100 hours into the one game I like. Not me. Can't be me.
Oh, see, it's an anxiety thing for me. Normally, I won't, but
I'm really impressed by the number of Final Fantasies you finished, because like those games can get really long.
Well, I also like to just have an RPG. Like typically I have like a short game I'm working on, an RPG kind of on the back burner. Right now I don't have one. We just finished Chrono Cross. Well, I guess I finished Chrono Cross like a month ago, but 16's coming, so I'm kind of like I'm letting my palate cleanse. So before I play Final Fantasy 16, I usually have a visual novel going, and then like the various game clubs, right? Like I tend to say yes to being on other people's podcasts with more frequency than I should, even though I enjoy them. Right. And then there's always the neural mapping work, which can be exhausting. Lately, we've been playing short stuff and I've been ahead of the curve, so it's not been a big deal. But yeah, I don't know. I try to juggle like four or five games at once, and one of them is usually an RPG. That's how I clear RPGs. I guess I did start Suikoden 2. I guess I'm currently 5 hours into Suikoden 2, picking at that.
Yeah.
Well, Godspeed.
Yeah.
Okay, out of 108 characters, how many are you at?
Oh, not very many, because I'm still like in the early plot stuff. I will get all 108. I will either drop the game or get all 108. Those are the only two options.
Yeah. It does that whole Chrono Cross thing, doesn't it? Where you can completely miss characters.
Oh, yeah. Suikoden 1 was like that too. And also, if you import a completed Suikoden 1 save, you get like some of those characters are repeat characters in 2, and they come with their like improved stats. And then I think at some point you can just get all the original 108 characters in the game. I don't know if that's true or not, because I haven't played it, but I will find out, because I did go through all the work to get a save working. So,
I mean, wouldn't that condemn you to being an Asura? You'd pass the 108, good Buddhist number.
Sure.
You'd be fucked.
Yeah. I'll finish your RPG. It's not a big deal.
Shall we take it to questions?
Yeah. If you, the listener, ever want to send us questions, just send them to emails at scanlinemedia.com. We just have 2 this month, but I'll go ahead and read out the first one from Kyrie. Private Eye Dol's use of technological advances to provide things like voice acting and bigger 2D sprites reminds me of the trend going on in the West around the same time, FMV. The Sega CD was a console full of FMV games with limited gameplay and severely compressed video. The most remembered Sega CD games are titles like Snatcher and Demolition Man, and both are remembered for vastly different reasons. Many complaints back in the FMV boom in this era were about how little control you had in the game, resulting in countless rail shooters and camera switching games like Night Trap. My question is, why do you think Western developers pursued FMV so heavily in this era, despite how severely limited the technology was? What could they have learned from Private Eye Dol?
Got TV in your game.
So the consoles couldn't do the things that PC was doing with like 3D accelerated graphics, right? You couldn't get Quake running on a Sega CD. And if you could, all bets would have been off. They would have just put Quake on it, but they can't do that. So you have a disc technology, but you can't make PC style games because the hardware is not good enough. But you can play video really easily. That's the thing a CD lets you do, is serve up video and audio of reasonably good quality. More than you ever could on a cartridge for cheap. So they just made frameworks in which you could do that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And also, like, I always hesitate to be to provide more of a glowing view of like that period in games, just because the 90s were full of things that we remember as being more positive than they were. But like the 90s were genuinely an experimental time, especially for CD titles. Like a PC CD-ROM game could be anything. You could just create a video gallery of like visiting the specific world with a bunch of effects playing. You could play something like Night Trap or whatever that hotel game is on the Sega CD. Like there were a lot of terrible games, but that was because no one knew what the fuck they were doing and were kind of figuring it out as they went along. And
Well,
even though
it's also like the companies that were making games were still making games, like normal video games. It's the other companies that wanted to get in now that CDs were easy to. It's very easy to press CDs, very cheap. You could do it really quickly. It's not a huge startup cost, and development tools were different and more accessible. And I think that's a huge part of it, right? You get these people experimenting with forums, and they get out of video games like video games are not it. That are a big part of it, but like. There's FMV games that are wildly popular on PC of the era, or hybrid FMV games like Command and Conquer exists and stuff like that, like
or Wing Commander.
Wing Commander. It's specifically that Sega CD just wasn't the marriage of those two technologies in the way that like the West needed it to be. Also, if you put FMV in your game, you can sell it in a magazine really easy. You just take shots like, look, we got real people in our video game, buy it. I think a lot of that is driven by how games were sold in the 90s in Western markets specifically.
Yeah.
I think part of the divide as far as like using like anime, like, stuff versus like, live action FMV is I think it's easier to make the game look like the anime FMV, right? Like when you have these, FMV sequences and Private Eye Dol, it's, higher, fidelity, but it still looks like the art style of the game, right? And there are certainly games that did this better, but I think in a lot of FMV games, it just sort of feels like it clashes a bit with the aesthetic of the actual gameplay is another thing. Except for, like Star Wars Rebel Assault 2, but that game was fucking terrible.
Yeah, but you look like Final Fantasy VII, one of the most famous, beloved games of the 90s, really justified the PlayStation's CD-ROMs. This is what CDs bring to video games, because you couldn't do it on Nintendo 64. That game literally has 3 distinct art styles for its characters because each part of the game was made by a different development unit. The battles look different than the world map, looks different than the cutscenes because it was 3 people who were not talking, 3 groups not talking to each other about what the video game looked like until it was too late.
My older sister has a love of my oldest, I suppose I should say, 3 older sisters, so that's kind of not narrowing things down. Has a love of video games. She got into them before me. And she loves like a lot of like SNES and NES games. She cannot do early PS1 games, and she will single out Final Fantasy VII. She's like, I can't do the balloon animals. I can't play this game.
Literally, I find them so charming. I think they're the best aesthetic in 7. So
yeah, like I look at those distinct 3 parts, and a part of me is just like, well, it's kind of a miracle that they all look so closely. Like, even though they're different art styles, you can still like easily tell what the characters are and still get the same vibes like throughout.
Yeah, but I do think saying that like, oh, Japan had this figured out and all the aesthetics were like aligned is just not necessarily true. It's difficult sometimes. Why does Link have pink hair and Link to the Past, even though it's not in any of the art? Question of the ages. And the answer is because it makes his sprite look better.
Yeah.
And there's also a lot of like self-selection going on here, right?
Yeah.
Or not necessarily self. We aren't always the ones making the picks, but it's like, yeah, I mean, people tend to bother bringing over the, PC Engine and PC 98 games that they thought were good.
Oh
there
my
are
god,
tons of bad ones.
If you ever have like 50 hours to kill with your life, go watch Chrontendo. This is probably the best way to do this, which is a long-running YouTube series going chronologically through all the Famicom releases, specifically in order, and the amount of garbage ass Dragon Quest clones alone that came out on the Famicom that are miserable. And it's like just some Shonen Jump property or SD Gundam. They're gonna slap that shit into a bad Dragon Quest that they made in 3 months and ship it. Make your head spin.
Yeah, like a lot of it is a grass is greener type situation where we look at all these games that are in a language we don't understand and go, oh damn, I never got anything that looked quite like this over here. I bet it blows everything else away. And like sometimes it is that good, other times it's like, damn, this kind of sucks.
The real joy of the modern era is getting to play these games, and you play like a game. It's like, oh, I always wanted to play this. It never got a translation. Finally got a translation. Going, oh, this one sucks. It just looked good, and I didn't have it, so I like exoticized it. Now I'm sitting here playing, and I'm like, nah, not this one. There's like a freedom to realizing that the thing you thought was like really special was not special. You just were blinded by anime, and it happens to all of us. Happens to me all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was me finally sitting down to playing Racing Lagoon, because that game is incredibly confusing.
I really want to play it, but I just haven't had the... I know it's like a commitment, so I don't want to make it yet.
Yeah, I know some people like it a lot. It's just like, you have to be very good at both the RPG and the racing elements, and it punishes you hard if you're losing races.
Sounds like a time for slot saves.
Yes.
The other miracle of playing these games these days, even if they're bad, you can just hit F7 and start at the beginning of that conversation with the police chief again.
Yep.
If you, to be fair, in Private Eye Dol, when you die, the roll or like fail state, the rollback is very generous. Where you start from is always very reasonable.
Yeah, because that game has QTEs, and they can go by pretty fast.
Oh, I definitely got stabbed by the medium with the sword in the drawing room the first time she ran at me with the sword.
Oh, just the first time?
Yeah.
I got stabbed a couple of times.
Oh no, I went to the right instead of down, and then the second time I got out.
Yeah. The problem is because once it's like, okay, now go to the door, and I'm like, okay, so I have to zigzag. No, just run there.
Just run to the door.
You try to get fancy, she will gut you.
Yeah.
But yeah, in addition to our just initial question for, our initial prompt for questions, at the very last minute, we did ask whether people had a particular console library they'd like to spend more time getting into. We got a second response for Kyrie regarding that. She mentioned the game library I'd love to explore is the Sega Saturn. Tons of 2D games were never translated for English audiences, and there's been a push by fan groups to translate hidden gems like Bulk Slash. That I really want to play Burning Rangers. Listen to the theme song.
I'm waiting for the Saturn core for Mister to drop for Sega Saturn before I get into that. But I'm very excited to eventually do that, because I think I've played a Saturn once in my entire life. I played like a little bit of Nights into Dreams way back when it was new, and that was it. So
what'd you think of that?
I want to do it for normal mapping sometime once that core drops. So I don't know. Ask me in a year when I finally get to play it.
I gotta, listen. Like many of my generation, my opinions were informed at an influential age by Jeff Gerstmann, and I should go back now that I'm like, wait, he was wrong about a lot of things.
He was wrong about a lot of things.
Yeah. Saturn in particular is really hard to emulate. Like, I haven't really seen many good solutions about that, but like, I have seen a friend play through a decent chunk of the original Sakura Wars, which also has a fan translation, and that game seems really neat.
Yeah. It also, I think the original Sakura Wars got that PS2 port, didn't it? Or was that not the first one? Well,
I think it's not the first one.
Okay.
Yeah. There's like 2 or 3 total Sakura Wars games that got official translations in English.
Gotcha.
Including the PS4 one, which people always say plays nothing like the other ones.
That sounds about right.
For me, it's the problem of like which one of these don't I have like deep affection, like deep interest in going back and digging through. Because I grew up a Nintendo kid, like really devoted to like not only Nintendo consoles but the games Nintendo itself was putting out, which was enough for me to enjoy. And then I got into Final Fantasy, and that kind of changed the game a little bit, but honestly not as much as it probably should have. So like anything Sega, I just didn't have any framework for, and I've been trying to actively go back and play more like Genesis games and stuff. But like something like the like the Neo Geo. I just don't have any experience with the Neo Geo games. Like
Yeah.
I've played Metal Slug at a pizza place a couple times in my life, but like going through that library, everything's new. Everything's like, is this like a good fighting game? Is this a bad fighting game? I don't know. It's definitely a fighting game because it's on the Neo Geo.
There are so many fucking King of Fighters games. It's wild.
Yeah, half of them are King of Fighters. Another 20% are tied into King of Fighters some way that I didn't know until booting it up.
Fatal Fury, baby.
Yes.
Art of Fighting.
And then everything else is like some sort of beat 'em up, which also might be tied into like one of those in some way on a long enough road.
We need to innovate with a console that is the first ever console where every game is in the same universe.
Yeah. But then because I didn't have a computer that played video games until like 2009, like for real, right? Just PC games in general are a mystery to me. Like there's things that I'm interested in, and we've gone and played some for neural mapping, but like PCs, like early DOS stuff, even like the ZX Spectrum and like the Apple II, I'm like, these games seem like they came from a different universe of like aesthetics and sensibilities, and I'm always curious about them, but they're so alien to me that I have a hard time playing them. So I just ended up watching a lot of videos about them instead, which isn't the same thing. And I should go back and like actually touch them, but I do watch a lot of like retro gaming content for this exact reason of I don't know anything about the Commodore 64, but I can watch someone walk through like the top Commodore 64 games and go, oh yeah, I wouldn't like any of these, but now I know something about them.
Yeah, personally, in terms of my interest of classic consoles I haven't really touched. I'm leaning towards, like, now that I have TurboGrafx / PC Engine set up, I just kind of want to go through all that stuff because, like, there's a lot of what are considered definitive entries of certain games, like Ys Book 1 and 2 and R-Type, that, like, apparently the TurboGrafx version or the PC Engine version is the like ideal versions of those games.
Well, if you want the ideal version of R-Type, you can easily emulate the actual arcade version at this point, which is probably what you should do. But yes, if you want the home version, that is one of the better ones.
Yeah, it's very much like a situation where I've messed around with Genesis collections, I've messed around with NES and SNES games through both emulators and virtual consoles, but TurboGrafx and Sega Saturn are like my two big weak points in terms of just like game knowledge, so it'd be nice to learn more about them.
Yeah, I want to play more Dreamcast stuff, because I played stuff that's like been ported, but as far as actually playing something on a Dreamcast, I think I played some kind of like air combat sim on a demo station once.
I had a Dreamcast in this apartment, and you can just burn discs for the Dreamcast. It's really easy. I should plug it in. The problem is plugging a console of that vintage into my television is I'm making compromises somewhere in a way that I just don't like to do.
Yeah.
Oh, the other answer, this is just a short gremlin answer, is at some point I need to make Dylan talk about the Bandai RX-78.
What?
Bandai made a console called the RX-78.
What year did they make this?
1983. It has 20 games.
I was about to say, what is it?
Yeah, it's just this tiny little 8-bit computer.
Oh, okay, yeah. This autofills as a computer, so microcomputer that doesn't. I want. There's no image on Wikipedia. Oh, this thing's cute looking.
It's a friend.
This is extremely like of the era kind of ZX Spectrum style 8-bit computers. They're all unfathomable to me.
It was before my time, but the concept of like computers as standalone platforms like consoles is just the most baffling thing for me to wrap my head around. Like, no, it's a computer.
Yeah. And like when you plug into a TV, right? Like it doesn't even come with like, it's just like, here's the keyboard. It's also the computer. You plug it into something.
God, yeah. Like the most fascinating part of Atari 50 is like looking at the various attempts of Atari to get into the computer business and just being like, oh yeah, it does your taxes and teaches you about the world, but it also plays video games.
Yes.
Yeah. Computers used to be a completely different thing, and that's kind of fascinating.
Yeah. Yeah, and there's a whole genres of games that just don't really get made anymore that are like in the interest set of this podcast and like the podcasts I do, it's just hard to access a lot of them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we have one other question from Emrys. Hey novelists, thanks for checking this game. It was a fun game and I only got stuck pixel hunting or figuring out missed dialogue a couple of times, unlike some of the Phoenix Wright games. So my question is, what adventure games have the best solutions for pixel hunt / search / investigation segments? Because nothing ruins a game more than being stuck for hours sifting through things trying to find what you missed. I'm someone who really likes when modern adventure games have a button you can press to just look at all the hotspots. Like
yes, the Full Throttle remaster has that, and it's genuinely like game changing because that game has a couple puzzles that are very pixel hunty, and just having an R around the stuff you can actually touch helps a lot.
I don't know if I've played any that have that, but I sort of have, because I, back in the day, played like Flash ones, and if you like clicked off and then hit tab, it would just highlight anything that you could click on.
Wow, okay. I didn't know about that.
Some of them had like code to stop this from happening, but yeah, back in the day, a lot of it was just like, oh, you just hit tab and anything you could click on would get highlighted with a little box.
That's how I played the Bionicle adventure game back in the day.
Excuse me, the what?
Oh, you didn't hear about that? Like,
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. How could I have not have heard of the Bionicle Flash adventure game?
Oh, just like, back when I was a kid, like, everyone knew about the specific websites that had fully fleshed out, like, Flash or Shockwave games you could play in your browser, just because it was a free thing you could play.
Sure.
Lego did a lot of those. Like, they had a full 3D movement adventure game called Lego Studio, but, like, they had a Bionicle game that was basically first person and all 2D and in Flash. And that game is really interesting and moody, but I ended up getting through a lot of the parts where I was stuck just by hitting tab a bunch and figuring out where I could click.
Another, like, this is not necessarily the same, but like another like unstuck mechanic that I'm a big fan of is like when people have like the multi-tiered hint system, right?
Mm-hmm.
Of like, general hint, specific hint, here's just the answer.
Yes.
Like that. Also, I don't think this is good, but I remember playing, I think, Ninja Gaiden 2, the Xbox one, and having my first encounter with sense the proper path and just dying laughing. My ninja sense is telling me this is where the plot is. Like, okay, great.
That's very funny.
Yeah.
I had this exact thing recently in Chrono Cross where I was really missing the Final Fantasy VII hit select to see all exits on the like map of the air, like the pre-rendered background.
Yeah,
because you just get into some of these like late PlayStation games. Like, I don't know what's a real door I can go through here. Like, where are the boundaries of this space?
Yeah, I forgot about that button on Final Fantasy VII. That's really helpful.
It's such a fascinating technical challenge, especially back in the day when they were working with pre-rendered backgrounds. Like, how can we make this environment look vibrant, alive, and large while also making sure the player knows where the fuck they can go?
Yeah. I have a lot of memories of like having problems with that in, like Ocarina and Majora's Mask, of like not just not being able to tell where I can go, but also like the hit boxes on like area transitions just being infuriatingly huge sometimes and stuff. You're trying to explore and you accidentally go back the way you came.
Oh, the first Kingdom Hearts is the worst about that, especially like when you're in the whale. Like, you would just get into situations where an enemy knocks you back and you end up moving to a different area. It's like, oh no, I didn't mean this at all.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's going to do it for emails. And as a teaser of what we're going to be doing next month, we're going to be playing through both Tron Identity and A Summer's End. Both relatively short visual novels that came out recently, and it'll be interesting to dig into both of them.
Yeah. Another short month in preparation for a long month.
Oh, what's the long month? Well, you didn't tell me off cast.
I just bleep it. I know how to bleep things.
Okay.
It's fine. We're playing
Okay, yeah, sure. Yeah, that's a long month.
Yeah. No, I mean, listen, listen, a lot of bleeping about to happen. It's like, okay, we're going, and then we're paying both, and then.
Who talked you into doing that? Who talked you into doing that one?
Oh, that was me.
Okay,
that was me. I love those games.
Okay.
Yeah, that was 6 being a sicko.
Just wall to wall bleeps here.
just let through keywords like sicko. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah.
God, great to have you back home after you left us.
I don't know if I go that far, but it is nice to come through every once in a while.
Yeah, it's always great podcasting with you. But yeah, where can people find you on the internet?
You can find me on Twitter at em_being. What I want you to do, if you're listening to this, is not go to any of my podcasts. You probably know where they are. I want you to go to youtube.com and type in Dia Lucina, and you need to go and watch me and Dia play through Gabriel Knight 2, which we are 2 episodes into, and we're recording the 3rd one tonight, and I'm very excited. If you want to understand the beauty of narrative games and FMV, which we brought up earlier, Gabriel Knight 2 is fucking it. I'm so excited. This game is electric and beautiful.
Yeah, I love that game so much. Like, you're in for a real fun time.
Yeah, I'm having a great time. We also played Space Quest, which most of those were bad, but we had a good time. Me and Dia hanging out playing adventure games is a good thing that more people should check out, I think.
Yeah.
As for Jen and I, how did you find this podcast if you don't know?
The pirate internet, where all the Patreon shows go when people steal them.
We're not big enough. No one cares. I mean, just in case, I guess, listen, add 6Detmer on Twitter. DM me, let me know you pirated it. I'll get really depressed. You'll ruin my day.
Damn, don't do that.
I'm gonna say you should go to Patreon and check out the Safe Room podcast, because, both Grace and Rose do an excellent job going through various horror games, and the bonuses of hearing them talk about other stuff as well, and supporting them. It's well worthwhile.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I might have been their first patron. I think I got in fast enough before anyone else did. And those bonus podcasts are both really good. I feel like the only people who complained about the Silent Hill movie entirely in the way they misuse the game music as cues in the film, which is perfect. I love it. Wouldn't change a thing.
Yeah, most people who hear that music are just like, oh yeah, it's the Silent Hill music. All right. But yeah, that's gonna do it for us. And until next time, I'm gonna beat 6 to it this time. Quick save.
This is just my ultimate win. I've been trying to force this to be the thing. And I've won.
I guess you have.
But I didn't get M to say it. No.